Welcome, everyone. I call the July 19th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting to order. The main purpose of tonight's meeting is a public hearing on the Downtown Transition Affordable Housing Overlay, DTAHO, Voluntary Incentives and Comprehensive Plan and Code Amendments. Before we move on to the agenda items, I'd like to acknowledge our hybrid meeting format. City of Bothell is providing the option to attend this meeting either in person or remotely via Zoom. For those participating via Zoom, the chat and question functions are not available to ensure compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act. We have a public comment agenda item at the beginning of the meeting. This time is for comments on issues not on tonight's agenda. Please limit these comments to 3 minutes. We will be using lights to signal, right over there, those lights, to signal available time. When the yellow light appears, commenters will have about 20 seconds to conclude. When the red light appears, your time is up. Please note that the City of Bothell does not tolerate verbal harassment. Please remember this during your comments. Public comment and hearing testimony will be allowed both in person and via Zoom. Those wishing to comment via Zoom are asked to submit an online form by 3 p.m. today. People wishing to submit written comments were also asked to submit those comments by 3 p.m., and we did receive some comments today. Email may also be used to make comments, and if you are interested, please use the sign-in sheets and let us know. The Imagine Bothell notice, city website, and tonight's agenda all provided information to the public for providing comments. Video of this meeting will be streamed live as well as recorded and available for later viewing on the city's YouTube channel. A call-in number was provided on the meeting agenda for members of the public who wish to call in by phone and listen live to the meeting. For our phone-in callers, during staff presentations, the staff will make every effort to specify which materials they are referencing so that everyone can follow along. At this point, I'd like to acknowledge the attendance of members. Commissioner Jones?
Present.
Commissioner Westerbeck?
Here.
Commissioner Curd?
Here.
Commissioner Robson is absent and excused. Commissioner Anders?
Here.
And Commissioner Gustafson?
Here.
In addition, tonight we have Deputy Community Development Director Ashley Winchell, Community Development Director Jason Greenspan, and Senior Planner Dave Boyd in attendance. Lastly, before we begin, I'd like to reiterate some meeting guidelines. For all meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name each time before speaking. Mute your microphone when not speaking. If you are also streaming the live video feed, please turn the sound off as there is a delay. Before we speak, I'd like to remind commenters that while you may speak to whatever topic you choose, we ask that if you are a council candidate, you not use this time to speak to your own campaign. Each person is solely responsible for their comments, but speaking about your own campaign could be a violation of campaign laws, which the Public Disclosure Commission would determine. For commissioners, at specific breaks in the presentation, I'll be calling on members who wish to speak or ask a question. If you want to speak, please indicate this by raising your hand, and I will call on you as I see you. This will help avoid the problem of having two people speaking at the same time. Identify yourself before you ask a question, make a motion, second a motion, or participate in debate. And please mute your microphone when not speaking. So the first agenda item tonight is public comment. The city has accepted visitor comment in writing, as well as accepted sign-up sheets for those who wish to attend tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to staff no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all commissioners and are part of the agenda. This time is for items not on tonight's agenda. Deputy Director Winchell, please let us know if there are any comments.
We have several people signed up to speak tonight, but I'm assuming that they are probably here for the public hearing. I'll just say your name. If you're here for the public hearing, you can just say no or give me a nod no. Lucy Antonio? Are you here to speak about the name of the
Downtown Transition Affordable Housing Overlay Voluntary Incentives.
Okay, so there will be a time to speak for that, and then this is just for general comments for tonight's. Okay, Katie Inquist. Okay, Catherine Covell. All right, Rossler Plantilla. Okay. And then there's one attendee, but they have told us they'd like to speak during the public hearing. So if anyone else would like to speak, they can approach the microphone.
I'd like to speak both times.
Yep. Go
All
ahead.
right, 3 minutes each.
Hi,
Part one and part two, right, Kevin?
Deputy Director. I did want to make sure that the feed is working because on our screens it appears to be frozen.
Yeah, I am frozen.
We had this issue last time and it appeared that things were working, but okay, now they're moving
Yep,
again.
now it's unfrozen.
Okay.
All right, proceed.
So, I prefer extemporaneous speaking, but I got a lot to say today. So, you guys are not agents of my altruism, right? And while you're giving away stuff out of the tax money or whatever revenue from the state you're getting, remind yourself that I'm altruistic on my own behalf. I give away plenty of money. I give away a lot to charity. So here in the city of Bothell, we've seen single-family residences and the comprehensive plan, current comprehensive plan, not the future one, I think we all know what's coming, but the current comprehensive plan says single-family neighborhoods are to be protected from any kind of intrusion. That's what it says. That's what you're held to. That's what you've sworn to uphold your duty to. Now, we've built a lot of social equity in this town through the last 40, 50, or 60 years. I mean, a lot. That's why Bothell's a pleasant place to live. But that social equity is not for you guys to slice and dice and then divide it up and hand it over to real estate developers who are just voraciously trying to get their vacation condo in Maui. It's not up to you to hand it over because you're compassionate to people that don't even live here yet. Right? We are growing at 50 times the rate of the US population rate. There is no affordable housing crisis. You can check it out in the apartments. Even the CIA says we're only growing at 0.68%. So we're growing at 10 times more than that. The state of Washington in 2015, 7,165,000. 2022, 7,785,000. That's 1.5%. HB 1110 requires 4%. And you guys are doubling that out in the next 2 years. It's not your equity giveaway. Follow the comprehensive plan until the new one's out.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any Zoom commenters?
Can anyone comment?
Excuse me?
Can anyone comment?
Yes, anyone can this is for comments not on the housing amendments. You know, there will be a public hearing as part of those amendments, which will come up. But this is the public comment period, which is expressly for items not on tonight's agenda, even though that's sometimes bent. But any Zoom commenters?
If anyone on Zoom wishes to speak at this time, you can raise your hand. The person I'm seeing in Zoom, I know, is signed up to speak at the public hearing, so I believe we can move on.
All right, then we will proceed. We have before us the June 21st meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I move to adopt the minutes as written.
Commissioner Westerbeck moved to adopt the minutes as written. Is there a second?
Sarah Gustafson, I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the minutes of the June 21st meeting as submitted. Is there any comment around, any discussion around those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have 6 commissioners in favor. The minutes of the June 21st meeting are adopted. The next item on our agenda is a public hearing on the Downtown Transition Affordable Housing Overlay, Voluntary Incentives, and Comprehensive Plan and Code Amendments. It's a mouthful, and you can't even pronounce the acronym. So with that, I'll turn it over to Senior Planner Boyd, and we'll open the hearing.
Thank you, and good evening, Planning Commissioners. I make it a silent D, so it's just Tahoe. So I'm going to share my screen and do a brief presentation. Some of this will be repeat, but I've pared it down a bit. So this is a continuation of the hearing from June 21st. The packet provides some additional analysis since the June 21st public hearing. It includes the draft code amendments with very minor revisions, which I will. Is my 3 minutes up?
I'm sorry, I accidentally pushed it to go again, not turned it off. So 3 minutes since the last comment.
Maybe I should be limited to 3 minutes. Which I'll get into later in the presentation. And then we're looking for a commission recommendation on the plan and code amendment proposals and the findings. So I just wanted to touch again on public notification. We did a courtesy mailing to all addresses within 500 feet of the Downtown Transition Affordable Housing Overlay. That's not strictly required for an area-wide plan and code amendment like this, but that has been our practice. There are also notice boards on the subject property, and at the beginning this was paired with another one at the head of Hall Road, so there were notice boards on each of those properties, and the public hearing was noticed on our website and in the Seattle Times. Just a little background, and this will be a bit of a rehash, but I do want to cover this for the purposes of the public hearing. The original downtown plan proposal for the transitional districts, Downtown Transition, General Downtown Corridor, and SR 522 Corridor, as studied in the environmental impact statement, was for 4 floors and 54 feet of height in those zones. It was scaled back to 3 floors and 35 feet with a density limit in the downtown transition during the city council deliberations. The density limit was removed for the solid orange areas on the map here, and it was kept for the orange areas with white crosshatch in 2018, or before 2018. In 2018, we passed a housing strategy that prioritized creating more affordable housing opportunities and requirements where possible. Basically, we can require affordable housing when we increase the capacity. And so the density limit was removed from the orange area with black crosshatch at that time, and affordable housing requirements were added. They require for a development of 5 or more units to provide 10% of the units as affordable at a level of 60% of area median income for rentals, and 80% for ownership housing. So that's the current, how the code stands now, and some of the background on that. In October of 2021, we received an application from Dave and Connie Drews to rezone 5 parcels that they purchased, shown here as the project site, and add a voluntary affordable housing incentive that would apply in their application. They suggested it apply to the entire downtown transition district. They proposed that those incentives be used even if the entire development is not affordable, and they proposed a 50% threshold. And they also proposed a couple of conditions that would relate to that, and other amendments to allow the voluntary incentives. As we studied their application, we asked them for more background material showing what they proposed to do, so that we could make sure that the amendments would address those. We also looked at the current zoning here, which is shown here, and basically the changes that would be made would be removing or basically expanding the downtown sub-area to include the 5 parcels, and making them part of the downtown transition district and the downtown transition affordable housing overlay, as shown in the blue borders here, if we can see those. The Drews proposal is shown here, a massing diagram of their proposal, which has 2 levels of parking. The front of this parcel of the building facing the intersection of 96th and Thorsk would be a 2-level lobby area, so that would count as 1 floor, and then 4 levels of housing above that. What it is not is what has been depicted in some forums as a 6-story proposal. They did at one point ask us to consider allowing a 6th floor, but we have not moved forward with that. And it also does not allow even 5 floors adjacent to residential zoning on a flat site. We've made adjustments in the code amendments to only allow an additional 2 floors in a situation where the new development is at least 2 floors below the nearest surrounding residence. And so here you see the view from the west or the southwest looking northeast, and so the building would be more or less in scale with the POP, and the surrounding residences are shown in the lower left and upper left of this image. We asked them to do a parking study because they had originally raised the possibility of amendments to the parking requirements, but we asked them to test out the parking reductions that were approved in 2019 under a state mandate to reduce parking requirements near frequent transit. And there is a provision in those amendments for reduced parking levels for special needs and senior housing. So they did a parking study based on their proposal of a mix of special needs housing and also a mix of affordable and market rate units. And it showed that they could satisfy the parking requirement under the current code provisions. And then these are some comments that came from the Drews following their application. One issue that came up were our retaining wall regulations, which are retaining structure regulations, as they're referred to in the code. And they showed these examples from the villas at Beardsley development on the left, and also in the center there. Later, they also pointed out the Ross Road Apartments and what they were building there. That's still under construction. So we did look at that, and we discussed that with staff, and there were some recent revisions to the retaining wall regulations that would make these walls on the left non-conforming, but the example in the center seemed to be something that would make sense, and that there was support on staff to make amendments to the retaining wall regulations, which we've included here, and those would apply citywide. And then on the right are some images of a similar project in Lake City, the Bode at 125th, that has these small efficiency apartments with some shared kitchen space and shared outdoor space, which is what the Drews are proposing to build. So again, and this is a repeat from last time, but I wanted to get this out there. So we're revising the retaining structure regulations to address inward-facing walls, similar to the ones shown in the image here on the right of the Ross Road apartments, where they were able to do an engineered retaining wall right off of the property line, and then provide their landscape buffer in a raised planter and still have enough room for fire access. So those amendments are shown here. For a non-engineered retaining wall, it would have to be, the base of the retaining wall would have to have a 1-to-1 slope up to the grade at the property line, shown in this diagram. And for an engineered retaining wall, they could build it within a foot of the property line. The height could extend above the property line to catch any objects that came rolling down the slope, and then in cases where there is a special setback requirement with a landscape buffer, that could be done in one or more raised planters, as shown here. We're showing a 12-foot maximum height here, but there are also provisions to go beyond that with mitigation. And that type of mitigation is already existing in the code. The code proposal also modifies special setback requirements adjacent to residential-only zoning. This is what's currently in the code that limits development to 3 stories at the setback line, and then anything taller than that needs a 65-foot offset from the on the upper level. The provisions here say that if the new development, and I'll get to that shortly, is lower, as long as it's approximating this situation on a flat site with a 3-story building, it can be done through the voluntary incentives only. So it doesn't change these special setback requirements in other situations. So here's the illustration of how that works. The additional height allowed is 19 feet, up from 35 to what was studied in the EIS of 54 feet. And that's enough for up to 2 stories. You can only do that if your average grade plane of the new construction is at least 19 feet below the nearest grade elevation of the nearest residence. So that's in a nutshell. I did want to point out a couple things. The previous packet showed the property line, the adjacent setback on the adjacent property. That really isn't relevant to these code amendments, so I've just removed that from this diagram. So I want to touch quickly on the affordable housing provision. Like I said, there already is a mandatory program here that would apply to any development and would require 10% of, or any development of 10 units or more as proposed in these code amendments, and require 10% of the units to be affordable to moderate income, moderate low income housing. And then what is being added here is the voluntary incentive allowing up to 5 floors and 54 feet for projects that meet, that have 50% of the units affordable at an average of 50% of the area median income, or I should say to households earning an average of 50% of the area median income. And that's using the average of 50% is what we did in the other voluntary incentive program in SR 522, so that they had the flexibility to provide some units at 30% AMI and some at 60% AMI. That was an entirely affordable housing project being funded by affordable housing grants that had different levels of affordability in their requirements, so the flexibility was important. In this case, the Drews are proposing a mix of affordable units and market rate units, and thus the minimum of half of the units being affordable. And then, of course, the additional condition that it be lower than the adjacent residences. Since the last hearing, we've had some comments and a few things came up. One had to do with micro apartments. The proposal is essentially for micro apartments, which are small efficiency units that all have their own bathroom and a food prep area, but not a full kitchen. And then there's a shared kitchen on each floor. Under previous code amendments, we made some adjustments to permit micro apartments, but there was an oversight and the minimum size was not specified in the code, so that we've added that here at 250 square feet, which is very comparable to surrounding jurisdictions. Some are a bit lower, some are a bit higher. The micro apartment affordability was based on recent projects in Kirkland, Shoreline, and Redmond, and it is just slightly lower than the market rate for that type of unit, but it would establish a contractual affordability limit that would last for the life of the project. So, and Mike Stanger from Arch, who has done the affordability analysis for us, is here tonight and can answer more detailed questions about that if the commission has them. And then we also have stated that there does appear to be a demand for micro apartments in Bothell, and that's based on interest from developers wanting to do micro apartment developments, interest from the campus in having this type of housing available to students as the campus demographic changes and it's become less of a commuter campus and more of a resident campus, and regional analyses that show that these types of projects are having success and filling up quickly in surrounding jurisdictions. I want to touch on parking reductions. As I stated, we've made some state mandated provisions that include reduction for senior and special needs housing in proximity to frequent transit. This will be less than a quarter mile from the projected Sound Transit BRT station near the library. The current code allows a parking reduction to 0.3 spaces per unit as justified by a parking study. The thinking there is that many of these residents will not own cars, but a parking requirement is required for staff and visitors, and again, this is a mix of special needs housing and market rate housing, so there will be a need, and the parking study did indicate that about 0.34 spaces would be required. Another comment that we've received recently is why doesn't the code require a certain percentage of special needs housing? That's not considered to be necessary because the parking requirement does that for us, basically. So that if this project is approved with a reduced parking requirement, that would become part of the contract or the covenant that the development would have to sign before they gain occupancy, and it would carry through for the life of the project, just like the affordability provisions. So that, again, is something that we will utilize ARCH to help us draft those contracts and monitor them with annual reports. And then we've also had comments about traffic impacts and suggestions that this only be allowed if they make street improvements within 1,000 feet of the project. So just this afternoon, I forwarded some responses to those suggestions from our Public Works Department. And they basically had two major points. We do require traffic impact fees with projects, and those do go towards projects identified in our transportation improvement program. And those include things like safe routes to schools and other improvements that have been identified as a need. And the purpose for that is that those monies go to the areas where the need is greatest. As far as direct improvements done by the development, those are limited by rules that have been established in state law and in case law. And basically, there needs to be a nexus. There needs to be a direct connection between the impact of the project and the improvements that are required. And they have to be proportional. They have to. They can't go beyond any impact of the project. So for the most part, the direct improvements that we require are limited to frontage improvements on the project's actual frontage. And there's more detail to that response in Exhibit 119, the email exchange with Cameron Hilton that was sent to Planning Commission this afternoon. I do want to acknowledge that just since the June 22nd hearing, we've received a number of comments. A number of them were form letters, and so I've just tried to include just one copy of that and our response to that, and then list all the folks that had submitted those. So those I enter into the record tonight, exhibits 83 through 120. So tonight, we're asking the Commission to take action, starting with any clarifying questions on the presentation. As we did last time, I'll give the applicant an opportunity to make a statement if they wish, or they may wish to not to make a comment or to hold that comment until after the public testimony, and then move into Commission deliberations and finalize tonight's hearing meeting with a motion and vote on the findings, conclusions, and recommendations to City Council. And if that is done, the plan is to take it to City Council for a study session in September and potential action in October. So there'll be more opportunities also for public comment.
Thank you, Senior Planner Boyd. Commissioners, clarifying questions? Yes, Commissioner Gustafson.
Hi, Sarah Gustafson here. Senior Planner Boyd, I'm wondering if you could speak to the idea of spot zoning. I feel that many of the audience members have voiced support for Drew's and not for the entire DTAHO amendments. Would you be able to help us explain why it would have to be area-wide instead of just at the Drew's property?
So we do try to avoid anything that could be challenged as spot zoning, special zoning just for a single property or a set of properties under a single ownership. Beyond that, our code doesn't have provisions for either contract rezones or development agreements. We do have provisions for development agreements, but they're they generally have been used only for properties that the city has sold for development. And there aren't, we didn't feel like there was a good path to making amendments that would only apply to these properties. So we constricted them to the next largest logical area, which is the Tahoe area.
Are the commissioners, Commissioner Jones?
Senior Planner Boyd, I wonder if you could help me with a portion of the analysis where it talks about the rezone of Drew's parcel on page 28. And towards the end, it says, based on similar site access and characteristics, staff has found that Tahoe to be an appropriate designation. What are the other examples of sites with similar access and characteristics? And I'm assuming when you say characteristics, you mean topography, you mean foliage, you mean other types of issues. Are there any examples where it's been rezoned or zoned to similar density that in terms of what's being proposed here?
Well, I'm not sure this answers your question, but please follow up if it doesn't. The main reason that we felt that it was appropriate to rezone it to Tahoe was that the only access, the only feasible access to this property is from 96th and Thorsk. And even though the lot layout was done with a notion of connecting to 95th Avenue Northeast up the hill, that access would go across to private property, and the topography is really pretty prohibitive for that. So even before this proposal came along, we had identified this as an area that would make sense to include in the downtown sub-area and to have similar zoning to the properties directly to the south and to the east of it.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Just a quick follow-up. Do we have examples of other properties that are like that in the downtown zone in terms of topography?
Yeah, I think all along West Hill are properties that abut residential-only zoning that is up the hill, up West Hill from downtown. The topography gets less steep as you go further south. So our analysis, for example, at the very south end was that there probably would only be about a 10-foot differential between a new development and the adjacent single-family zone. So there, only an additional floor could be gained through these voluntary incentives, and we think it's highly unlikely that a developer would agree to do 50% affordable units for just a single floor of additional height. So I think there's a limited number of sites where this really could pencil out, and they're mostly, I would say, mostly north of 180th.
Other commissioners? Seeing none, I think we would move on now. Do the applicants wish to make a statement now or defer that?
We'd like to defer.
Defer, okay. With that, then, we'll open for public comment on this. Step up to the microphone. When you wish to comment, please state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes with the lights letting you know where you are.
We have one person who signed up to speak who's on Zoom. I'm going to start with them tonight. So,
Okay.
Barack Schringer, I'm going to promote you to speak. All right.
Thank you. Schrager, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. All right, I just got a couple statements here. I don't have anything personally against any of you guys or the Drews. We just have concerns and we want to voice those concerns. And I'll start my statement. My name is Barack Schreiger, resident of Bothell. Public's being told here that this project is about housing folks with IDD. I actually didn't hear anything about that, Planner Boyd, until the latter half of your statements. I don't know if that's changed. But only 50% of the capacity is being allocated to that. So why is that? We're being told now that there's a need for micro apartments, and now there's a voluntary incentive. And now we, the public, have to make sure it pencils out for the proposer. So I'm asking, what is preventing a developer today from being able to just do 100% allocation of IDD within the existing codes? Can we have an answer on that? The proposer purchased lots that rely on the city to change existing code so that the public can make it pencil out for them. So I'm assuming they knew of this risk and this dependency before they bought these lots. Public's being told that it's just like the SAMA project. And if you look in your packet today, you'll see SAMA mentioned about half a dozen times. But it's 100% nothing like SAMA, where 100% of the housing is affordable. If it's not the same, please stop mentioning it and stop misleading and confusing the public with these comparisons. The public is being told that this is not about expanding the transition zone, but here we are in this proposal, we're discussing rezoning residential into transitional zone. And we, the public, have no recourse to ensure that this doesn't continue in the future to any area around the downtown transition zone. The public's being told every time the commission meet, this is not about 5-story buildings adjacent to residential homes. And yet these area-wide amendments, if approved, would enable these projects, like the Carlson project that you guys don't want to talk about, to move forward with far less scrutiny. So yes, this is about 5-story apartments adjacent to residential homes. Telling us it's not is misleading and inaccurate. I know many of you on the commission here were extremely involved in a very public way when it came to an issue that you guys all care about very deeply, which is middle housing. And you participated in these walking tours. And yet, as of now, to the best of my knowledge, none of you guys have engaged publicly with these issues. None of you have engaged publicly with issues clearly folks in the community are concerned with here. How many of you actually walked the Drews and the Carlson sites? So I have an idea for everyone here. How about we do a walking tour of the transitional zone perimeter so you guys can see the Drew site and the Carlson site and all the other sites that would be enabled by developers to build apartment complexes up against residential homes and force residents to live within an apartment building 15 feet away from their property, or force them to sell their home to that developer to avoid being stuck in that situation. So why don't we go knock on some doors and see how they feel about that potential reality.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes is up.
If this density excites them. I'm sorry, I've got a couple statements here.
No, I'm sorry. You have 3 minutes and your 3 minutes is up. So thank you for your comments, and we saw your written comments as well. So thank you. Shall we proceed through the sign-in sheet?
The first person on the sign-in sheet is Lucy Antonio.
Is this on? It is, okay. Yeah. My name is Lucy Antonio. I have lived in downtown Bothell for 25 years. I have worked for the North Shore School District for over 30. I come speaking for myself and for my neighbors. Last time you tried to rezone us, we formed a committee, it was called Save Our Neighborhood, and I live on 186th Northeast. It's one block over. As neighbors, we want to keep our neighborhoods, our sun, and our trees. I have a small grandson who luckily lives right next door to me, and we have many children. I don't want a 5-story building cutting off my sun, my air, and cutting down the trees in my neighborhood. Do we want Bothell to look like Lake City, Redmond, and Northgate? These are soulless and bleak neighborhoods. That's what's going to happen to us. Finally, my neighbors and I live in affordable homes. I want you to honor are homes, even they're old and not what you might want in the downtown area. And I want you to be aware not to change the zoning where we live and where other neighbors live in single-family homes. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person on the list is Katie Inquist.
Hi, my name is Katie Inquist. So before we consider such drastic code changes, I think it's really important to understand the desired goal. And I'm honestly not sure what that is. So what is truly driving this? In the agenda, I see a lot of things. First, it's supposedly more affordable housing. Is it really affordable? While the total projected price for these micro units might be within the acceptable affordable level, the actual price per square foot is pretty high at over $5 per square foot. And based on this price per square foot, it would be like charging nearly $2,700 for a 500 square foot studio in Bothell. So these numbers have hardly been touched on in any of these meetings, and I'm curious as to why it hasn't been discussed further. In the agenda, it also states that there's evidence of demand for micro units like these. Have any of you seen or reviewed this evidence? If not, why not? All I've heard is that developers and the two colleges are requesting it. So that doesn't seem like a good enough basis for me. Unfortunately, our amenities in Bothell are lacking, and I find it hard to believe that there is substantial and concrete evidence which proves this type of housing is needed here. For anything beyond students, a quote, variety of housing is needed. This will simply flood Bothell with micro units. What about the families and really anything beyond a single individual? With the profitability of these units and the lesser cost to build with only a shared kitchen, how can we ensure this mix we so desire? What's missing is not micro apartments or even apartments at all. There's a mass of apartments currently in development in Bothell, and it's unfortunate that we didn't require some of these units to be affordable. It is definitely correct, however, that housing for individuals with IDD is missing. I don't believe this is the argument here at all. So how can we achieve this without changing the rules for any other developer? The senior housing on 522 is referenced a lot, and like Mr. Schreiger mentioned, this development is 100% affordable for seniors. This senior housing project has also proven that we can allow code changes for very specific outcomes. Like we could for incentivizing developing housing. We could do this for incentivizing developing housing for individuals with IDD. Require 100% of the units to be for individuals with IDD. The community will receive a real and desired positive outcome, and it won't result in other developers simply taking advantage of the profitability of micro apartments, which truly don't benefit the community. In the agenda, it also clearly states that the financing approach anticipated for this project is what is limiting the percentage of affordable units requested. So allowing drastic code changes because a private party needs to ensure financing works out sends a very strong message to the community, and I urge you to find a more reasonable solution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The next person on the list is Catherine Koval.
Hi, my name is Catherine Covell. I live at 18524 95th Avenue Northeast. I am adjacent to the Drews parcel. I'm just north of it. Right now, my parcel is zoned R9600. That's all single family. And so if I wanted to develop my parcel, I could only put single family residences on it. That would be incompatible with what they're proposing next door. So I'm going to have to object to their proposal unless my lot can also be rezoned so that the uses can be compatible. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other sign-ins?
Rossler Plantilla.
Hi, my name is Roselier Plantilla. I live here in Bothell for 35 years and still counting. I've seen Bothell grow, okay? I've seen the street of Bothell from 35 years ago up to today, and nothing has changed from the street being widened or to accommodate the traffic, which is now being used by huge amount of vehicles coming in. Apartments are growing up or sprouting out everywhere, which will continue to add more vehicles in that said streets. As for the apartment buildings, okay, raising it up to five-story will be even greater traffic or vehicle movement in the area, which will really create traffic. Try making a left turn on Ross Road going to 185th in the morning. And you cannot use, you can use the 185th and 104th Avenue, but it is really congested in the morning. Okay. I am against this amendment, and my question to the council is, if you have lived in your house for a long time, will you be happy if your left neighbor, right neighbor in your backyard will be with tall buildings? So that's my point for it. I don't like that amendment to be approved. It's just a suggestion. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
There's no one else signed up, but if anyone else wishes to speak, they can approach the podium.
In past written statements and in-person comments, I've explained and provided you the science that shows that tire dust preserved is killing up to 90% of the coho that return to our streams. Brook trout and rainbow are also extremely sensitive. The Chinook salmon and the kokanee are threatened and struggling in our watershed too. The salmon run depletion is so severe that the South Sound orca whales, whose diet consists of 35% coho, are struggling as an endangered species. Also in past written statements and in-person comments, I've explained and provided the science that inner-city buses shed more than 6 tons of tire dust per passenger mile as a family car or truck. Inner-city buses are the largest tire dust threat to our watershed. Don't depend on them for transportation. Additionally, I brought up not only tire dust in stormwater runoff is a problem, but the windborne tire dust that settles on our riparian areas next to our streams and wetlands. This may be a larger yet undetermined threat that more directly affects spawning headwaters. Put on a white pair of jeans and walk around up there. See what it looks like. The State Department of Ecology, working with over a dozen concerned agencies, The State Department of Ecology, working with over a dozen concerned agencies, do not yet have an answer on how to remediate the stormwater tire dust issue. There's no evidence on the horizon for what they might do. While we wait for answers, one thing that all are in agreement on is that this is a grave issue. And that increasing urban density will exacerbate the damage, possibly beyond our ability to recover our salmon populations. Good job. The current vision statement, right now, the way it reads, we the people of Bothell hereby set forth and pledge our commitment to achieve a common vision for the future of the Bothell community. Our vision for Bothell, based on the above values, is of community which maintains strong residential neighborhoods through public investments intended to protect neighborhoods from intrusion by incompatible uses. Demonstrates, oh geez, you know what? Just gotta be patient. Conveys an overall single-family residential character. How have we done on that? Lot P. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to change, we don't have to do any amendments until after December 31st, 2024. And then we got 6 months after that. Because of the problem with the environment, this pulls in RCW 42C030, 4221C110, and 4376-240, I think. These are all legal requirements that require you to engage with the Department of Ecology, Department of Commerce. They haven't even come out with the amendments yet.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes is up. Thank you.
I request that you follow the law.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments?
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, I'd like to speak. I forgot this was tonight. I'd come a couple other times and it was canceled. My name's Angelia Boyce. We live at Northeast 186th Street, right next to the large apartments that they're putting up. And I think I talked to one of the people when they first started doing it. I called City of Bothell. Said, oh, the roof line's not going to be higher than the one that's down there. It's going to be lower. We're putting up this retaining wall. But they don't mention they put up these huge elevator shafts, and it looks like they're putting like a picnic area or something up on top of there, but it's higher than what they said it was going to be. My life has been a living hell for the last 4 years as they've been, or 3 years they've been building it. The noise constantly, daily. We've had huge, the workers, you know, you can listen to music, but blaring music and rude, vulgar comedy shows. And my trees have been ruined in the back. They almost cut down a cherry tree. We saved it where the fence went up, which they removed without telling any of the neighbors they were going to remove the fence. The retaining wall. It's since they've been pounding, we've had plumbing problems. Our house has shifted a little bit. There's a crack forming in the ceiling, even though the retaining wall, some neighbors went with the nail spikes and others didn't. It's been awful. It's been horrible. I feel sorry for anybody who puts up any of this next to their home. My husband's lived there since the 50s. I've lived there for 30 years, but it's been a horrible thing. You know, Bothell's not for a day or a lifetime anymore. We're probably going to look for someplace else to live. It's not the same. I work out in my backyard. I'm working in a fishbowl. Oh yeah, and they also have decks now that face our yard, so people can just stare at us all day. It's really a sad turn of events. So I feel sorry for anybody who has one of these places built next to them. The Harbor Homes, they didn't listen to our concerns. No privacy trees ever came as promised. It's been a horrible, horrible experience. That's my comment. Please don't allow people to do this. It's ruined our home. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comments? Yes, please proceed.
So first of all, thank you, commissioners, and thank you, Bothell residents, for taking your time to come and voice your thoughts and your concerns. Just to give a little bit of background on Connie and I, so we are over 20-year residents of Bothell. We've been a part of this community for a very long time. We are not developers. We came to this particular position because we have an IDD daughter, and in looking around for solutions for her, we couldn't find any good solutions. And so what started as to look for a solution for her and a few others has actually become a bigger project because of the availability of additional property next to the lot that we initially purchased. So first of all, the need is tremendous for IDD housing. Just as a reminder, there was a Washington State study done in conjunction with the Department of Health and Social Services that showed that there were 37,000 people with IDD in financial need in Washington. From the time period 2010 to 2020, there were 28 units per year developed for IDD housing. And so there's clearly a shortage. And the shortage, we can talk about Washington State, and yes, that's local, but in Bothell, we are part of a IDD community, and so many people that we know are trying to solve the exact same issue. So this is for the community. It is for the community of Bothell. And it is a beneficial project to the community. There was a comment made about the cost of compact housing or micro apartments. There was a comment made from a developer that really stuck with me. And what the developer said is that a lot of the people that are looking for housing, they do not care about the parking amenities, the workout club. They don't care about a whole lot of things. What they need is they need something that has a price point that they can, on their income, meet. And so it is important to have this type of housing that is on the more affordable spectrum. If you look at the apartments that have been going into Bothell, most of them are in the $2,500 range per month. And that, for a lot of folks, is not in their budget.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes are up.
Okay.
Can I go ahead? Are we one and the same?
No, you're two different people.
So I'm Connie Drews, and I just want to continue on what he was saying is about the need for this type of housing in Bothell. You know, I have a lot of compassion for single-family homeowners. We are a single-family homeowner here in Bothell, so I understand, we get that. However, there's a cost to change, and the single-family homeowners, you know, it's hard, I get it, you know, but we're looking at our particular property and it makes sense. And unlike a lot of what we're talking about with the downtown transition zone, is that this property, it's only accessible from downtown. So to put a family, you know, to put it in with the single family housing up above, we're entering from downtown. So to me, that makes it very different than any of the other properties that some of them that we're talking about. There is no access from the single family property. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that was mentioned about the micro apartments, originally we had seen an example of housing that didn't have like kitchens in it. We are looking at, it will be a full, complete unit. It will have a full kitchen and a bedroom. It will be a complete studio because that's what we found makes sense. So I just wanted to bring that correction as well. So we really believe that there's a need there. And also the other comment was about 100% IDD. Well, that's not ideal because that's basically institutional. I do not want to put my daughter, or nobody would want to put theirs in. It's like me saying, okay, you with brown hair and brown eyes, you're going to go live with everybody else who has brown hair and brown eyes. It's not okay. So we want to provide a place where it's inclusive, where everyone's welcome. We really want to build community. And we really think this project is going to be a huge, huge, huge asset to Bothell.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. So if there are no other public comments, I will close the public comment period. And we'll move on then to Commissioner deliberations. So we have code amendments and we have findings, conclusions, and recommendations. Any thoughts on what you'd like to proceed first with? I kind of like to finish with the findings, but all right, then let's take a look at the code amendments.
And the packet also includes comprehensive plan amendments.
And code and plan amendments, yes. So I believe we start on page 41 of the packet. And we don't get to, well, there's the map update, which would include the parcels on 43 and 44. And I'll just keep moving. Please stop me if you have a comment on them. Page 45 makes changes to Bothell Way, updates the map, and changes single family to residential. Comments? No? We get into the code amendments on 46. Oh, you're scrolling ahead for me. There we go. I think we're up to page, yeah, there you go, page 46. And the underlined are what's changed. No comments, 46. Move to 47. Does clarify individual building or group of buildings as part of the development, so that's in there. and also specifies the size of micro apartments at that point. All right, seeing no comments, we get into the retaining walls. Comments on retaining, we've seen a lot of this before, so comments on retaining walls. Seeing none, 40, 50, 51. So page 53 has some significant changes it adds a section on inward-facing retaining walls. Previously, it was just retaining walls with no distinction between inward and outward-facing. Comments or questions on that? Seeing none. And again, we're moving quickly because we've been talking about this for quite some time. Yeah, 50. A figure clarifying the requirements for the engineered walls. And then the next one adds the subject properties. All right, so no. So now we're into downtown transition district requirements. Talk about the overlay here. Tahoe, we're calling it, like the lake. Okay. Does have some affordability requirements and defines what that means. And this is pretty similar to what's been done elsewhere. Voluntary incentive, allowing additional height, providing certain requirements are met. Bottom of 57. Oh, yes, Commissioner Westerbeck.
I just want to reiterate that part because I know I asked questions about it before. Senior Planner Boyd, just to confirm, for people who are concerned about the 5 floors, just want to be clear. There would have to be at least about a 19-foot difference between the average grade of the proposed structure and the average grade of an existing residential home for them to even employ this option, it sounds like, in addition to pledging 50% affordable. So for example, 186 up here, which is almost flat, we're not going to see this happen because there's not going to be 19 feet of grade. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, except it's between the average finished grade of the new development, which they will have all the data on that, and the nearest point of the adjacent restaurant residence. So that would actually make it harder to achieve that 19 feet.
Right. Point being, there's only place it's going to happen is where there's a significant slope. Right now, in all of the Tahoe area, it's really just the West Hill slope that I can think of. You're not going to really see it up here much. So anyway, I just want to be clear about that because I know there were some comments about that tonight, and I just wanted to make sure we understood that completely.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Westerbeck. So that was the voluntary incentive 57. Any other comments there? Oh, moving forward, there is a figure that illustrates what was discussed. And that is the extent of the code and plan amendments, correct? I get into comments.
That's correct. The rest of the packet are the comments.
Okay, thank you. And again, we've seen those amendments and to the code and the plan previously, so that allowed us to move more quickly. So now we'll go back to the findings, conclusions, and recommendations. My favorite part. Page 34 for those following at home. So I'm going to move fairly quickly through the findings because they're factual. First finding is a history of the proposal. Second finding specifically describes the location and the how the amendments are related to the location. Third finding describes the action briefly. Fourth finding identifies the various meetings and hearings we've had, and this is the fifth time we've discussed this. So we've had the opportunity to ask a lot of questions previously. Excuse me. The sixth finding describes the notice that went through this. It is fairly typical for an action, although as Senior Planner Boyd indicated, the mailing went broadly on this beyond the subject property because of the some of the other aspects of this. So any questions or comments on the findings? Seeing none, we will then move to our deliberations and specific findings. First one is based on what we've heard, testimony received. Second one described the need for housing. I'll use the numbers here, 6 and 7. Is there a comment? No? All right. Ninth one talks about the accessibility being limited to that one point on 96th and Thorsk. Yes, Commissioner Jones.
Sorry, I think you skipped number 8. I wasn't sure. Or did I miss that?
Well, we'll go back. Number 8 talks about it is an application for planning code amendments.
So my question is, and it's related to some of the comments that we received, what's the guarantee here in terms of the specific type of IDD project that the Jews are proposing? And I'm asking the question because my primary concern about these findings is it seems to be written in terms of the Dave and Connie Drew's proposal. However, if we recommend these amendments and their proposal changes, we would have codified something for, potentially perpetuity that doesn't actually accomplish the goal. So I'm a little concerned about how the findings are written. So for number 8, what's the guarantee that what is currently being proposed by the Drews is going to actually happen?
Senior Planner Boyd.
So there is no guarantee that their proposed project moves forward. There are many things that could happen. They could determine that it's not feasible. After all, the voluntary incentives, though, provide the opportunity to do a project like this, and also requirements related to it. So if they were to develop without special needs housing, which we already have addressed in our code in terms of the parking requirements, they would have to provide more parking, or they would have to do fewer units and probably a lower development. If they decided not to do affordable units, they wouldn't be able to use the voluntary incentive. So they'd be limited to 3 stories in that case. The idea is that the code doesn't specify a certain type of development. It provides opportunity to do a range of developments and then certain safeguards for the impacts of those.
Yes.
Thank you. That's exactly what I thought. And so my question, I'm going to turn my question the other way then. What is the rationale for us providing this voluntary incentive change to the code, separate from the Drews property? What is the primary reason for doing this?
Voluntary incentives have been identified in our housing strategy as one of the tools that we can use to incentivize affordable housing. So far in Bothell, we've implemented sort of three tools for affordable housing. We've done mandatory requirements where we've increased the capacity throughout an entire district, as we have in Tahoe. We've created multifamily tax exemptions as an incentive, and we've created voluntary incentives. So far, only in the SR 522 corridor neighborhood, and that's the one that has actually resulted in affordable units being under construction, affordable senior housing at the SAMA project. This one is, and in that case, we had an affordable housing developer that, because of the funding that they were getting, we're doing 100% affordable units anyway. This was an opportunity to look at a different, slightly different kind of incentive that would create an opportunity for a development that mixes affordable and market rate apartments, which is something that is also seen as a desirable outcome in terms of affordable housing.
And Senior Planner Boyd, I believe I heard you say that should they move forward with the project using these incentives and reduced parking, there'll be a contract that we'll enter into that Arch will assist you with?
So that's, yeah, they will, for the affordable units, they will have a contract that Arch will manage, and we've had discussions with Arch about expanding that to include other requirements of the development, like the parking requirement and the percentage of special needs housing that can also be included.
Commissioner Jones.
Commissioner Kiernan, the concern I have is with the way the findings are written is that what Senior Planner Boyd described in terms of the rationale for the voluntary incentives can stand on its own or should stand on its own without reference to the Drew proposal. And so I'm concerned that the language is mixing it up to suggest that this is really because of the Drew's proposal, which it isn't, right? And I'm concerned that they're getting mixed up. To me, what is being proposed today are actually two really different things. One is to extend the downtown transitional zone to this additional property and to change the code to provide for voluntary incentives across a particular zoned area within the city. And to me, they don't necessarily have to connect. And I find to me, the way it's written suggests that they're connected.
Do you have a suggested modification or edit?
Unfortunately, I think quite a bit of rewrite would be needed. I was trying to think how to do this, but I couldn't figure it out.
Can I offer a suggestion? The reason I even mentioned the Drews is that these code amendments did come up as a result of their application, but we could change finding 8 to simply say these comprehensive plan and code amendments provide an opportunity to address special needs in affordable housing in an area adjacent to denser downtown development services and existing and future transit.
Discussion around that proposed change? I see some head nodding. Commissioner Westerbeck?
I concur with Commissioner Jones. I think it's fine because it stands on its own, and I don't want to stop it because I think it's a good proposal. It's a good addition to our code. But yeah, if we can scrub out the Drews and just make sure it can happen, and that anyone can take advantage of this. This is going to be such a narrow needle to thread for most developers. Just to remind people, the transit-oriented development bill that died in the legislature this year was killed in part because they asked for 20% inclusionary zoning. That's enough to make most projects not pencil out. 50%, I actually, honestly, as someone who works on development sometimes, don't know how you get that to pencil out without subsidy. So, more power to you. That's great. I love it. Most developers can hardly make 10 or 20% work. So anyway, this could stand on its own without that. It's going to be a really high and difficult challenge for a majority of developers who aren't going to take advantage of this. also limited by the fact that there's only going to be a handful of properties in Bothell that would even work. So I don't think this is too much of a threat to most people. And but scrubbing the Drews out of this to just make it a basic code change seems like a great idea, and I don't think it probably has to be that difficult. Thanks.
So I've changed my Word version of this, had to switch documents to reflect the change I suggested to number 8.
Okay, can everybody see number 8 there? Does that address the concerns? It is a bit out of order, but I'll address at least the concern partially that this agenda and these draft findings are part of the record. So they exist independent of the changes that are made. The changes will be part of the final document, but the agenda and the findings, conclusions, and recommendations as previously submitted are there and live forever on the internet. Commissioner Jones?
I appreciate the suggested change here. I'm wondering if the word special needs really apply there as well if the Drews proposal is taken out. Is this an attempt to provide opportunities for some voluntary incentives for affordable housing, or is it to also do that for special needs? And this would be in number 8.
The reason I included special needs is because that's how this particular proposal meets its parking requirement, but that doesn't necessarily need to be in the finding, or it could be a separate finding. And I did switch to track changes here.
I feel as if we delete the reference to special needs in this finding, we would need another finding because there is a change in the parking requirement as well. Commissioner Gustafson?
Sarah Gustafson here. I might suggest adding a finding at the end of this list of findings to incorporate both the special needs information, the reason why the parking requirements are going to be what they are going to be, and also refer to the Drews proposal almost as a historical note for why this proposal was made. I really agree with Commissioner Jones' principle that these are general principles that should apply throughout, and I also think it's a good idea to bring us back to why this proposal is started as a finding, because we have been saying this, while we are doing this to enable the Drews proposal, we believe that this is valid policy for the Tahoe, and I think we could spell that out in a pending finding. Thank you.
I see Senior Planner Boyd has a blank space for another finding waiting to be filled. And it's not quite at the end because the last few are kind of boilerplate findings. But we'll let Dave draft with no pressure at all.
Of course.
I'm not sure that quite gets at what you were suggesting, but it does address the fact that the special needs project, as proposed, would be part of a contractual agreement for this project. This is another reason why in the packet, I suggested if you had changes to the findings that you send them beforehand, so we can do some wordsmithing, not on the fly, but that there's something to consider. And the numbering would be adjusted to match.
So, comments? Yes,
Tony
Commissioner Andrews.
I definitely appreciate the on-the-fly wordsmithing. I'm not so sure that it gets us where we want to be, because we talk about the proposed special needs housing, but we don't tie it to the Drews. They're still out of it, and the proposal sort of comes out of nowhere in the comments, since we've removed the Drews from number 8. So maybe we need a few more words in there, or another sentence. I'm not sure, but it feels a little bit disjointed to just start talking about special needs.
I added the applicant's proposed special needs or senior housing.
Could I make a friendly suggestion? Sorry, I'm over here today.
Voice
I'm wondering if maybe we could just have a finding that stated that this application was initiated by the Drews, and then these could be following findings, so that way it kind of memorializes where they came from, and then the different things that came out of that.
Well, the first finding does in fact say that.
Yes.
This is Commissioner Jones. In number 1, it could go on to include a sentence about the type of housing that was proposed by the Drews, right, to solve a specific problem. Because it really is part of the historical record.
Yeah.
That feels right to me, that would be a good place to identify that.
So I've added here to the first sentence in the finding number 1 that these amendments were applied for by Dave and Connie Drews in October 2021 to provide a mix of special needs and market rate housing, and then I'll go on to initiated by City Council.
Okay, then let's go back to 8. And
where I took out
special needs was removed from there.
And then added a new 14, just recognizing that the that proposed special needs housing would be part of a contractual agreement.
Yeah, I was wondering about senior.
I'm going to take that out since they're not proposing senior, but
yeah. Although it would have the same result, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that makes it clear that getting that, including the special needs, then drives a contractual agreement which will allow a limitation on the parking requirement. Looking at commissioners, we feeling okay about that? All right, let's go back up to number 9 when you're ready, Dave.
Okay.
All right, so number 9 talks about the accessibility for this property, which drives the addition to Tahoe. Seeing no questions. Number 10, height for the affordability. All right. Number 11. Talks about the fact that there is mitigation.
I have just a suggestion that our new sentence about the special needs housing might be better, might provide a better flow if it were the new number 11, because we talk about in number 10, the applicant's request to allow additional height, and then we can talk about the special needs and then move on more generally.
Okay, so make the new 14 a new 11 and push the others down.
Again, fix the numbering and formatting later.
All right, so we moved 11 for, and then the old 11 is now 12, talks about conditioning. All right. 13, specific to the retaining structures. Former 13, new 14 talks about this is limited and any impacts beyond this should be addressed.
That was from a suggestion at the June 21st hearing.
Okay. And then 14 is referring to the policies that support this. 15 says they will be sent to the Board of Commerce for review following our recommendation. 17, SEPA process. So after we make a recommendation, determination of SEPA determination will be made. And then the list of exhibits. And you can see that, and in fact, you will edit this list of exhibits to, or you did already, okay?
I've already edited the list.
Okay.
Again, sorry, not in tracks. What I still need to add are the folks that testified
Yes,
tonight.
you have that to be determined, and we now have determined who would be commenting, so you will add that shortly. All right. Commissioners, any comments, any further comments on that section? Seeing none, we get to our conclusions. First conclusion, drafted, noticed, and reviewed by the Commission in accordance with the laws of the State of Washington and City of Bothell. Second conclusion, the comp plan and code amendments are necessary to provide options for residential development. And third, the code amendments are in the best interest of public health, safety, and welfare. See general nodding in agreement on that. So based on these findings and conclusions, the Planning Commission recommends the City Council adopt the code amendments in Exhibit A to these findings, conclusions, and recommendations. Is there a motion to adopt these findings? There's discussion around that?
Yeah, I have, Chair, this is Commissioner Curd. In the final recommendation, I think we also need to edit it to include not just code amendments, but also comprehensive plan amendments. Just a Scrivener's error there. And I don't know if it would be included in another exhibit or if it would be included in Exhibit A.
I think
They are both in.
Yeah, they're both in Exhibit A.
Okay.
Attachment 2, Exhibit A.
Thanks.
Good catch.
So the code and comprehensive plan amendments will be inserted there. Okay. Any other comments? Keeping in mind, once there's a motion to approve these, there can be further discussion. So is there a motion to approve the findings, conclusions, and recommendation? Commissioner Westerbeck.
I move to approve the findings, conclusions, and recommendations as written and amended tonight.
Great, thank you. Is there a second? Yes,
I second.
Commissioner Anders.
I
Second.
second the motion to approve.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion around the findings, conclusions, and recommendations before us this evening? Commissioner Gustafson?
Yes, Sarah Gustafson here. I did want to ensure that along with the important work of specifying the findings and the code amendments, we also focus on the human-to-human dialogue with the people who have come out to speak about this. And I really want to appreciate the folks who have stuck through as long as they have. I believe that it is incumbent upon me as a planning commissioner to speak to why we are supporting this and to address at least one of the questions brought up by the people who have spoken here earlier. One issue I would like to speak about is whether or not certain units should be considered affordable or desirable based on the rent per square foot. And I appreciate folks doing the calculations. I would argue there is a premium on having one's own unit that is private, in which they can be independent, and from which there is walking distance to the amenities that are needed. I believe that I myself would pay more for a smaller unit in an amenity-rich community than a space in somebody else's house far away. And there's a premium there, and it is a premium that is very much described and desired by the families with people with in the IDD community. And I encourage other planning commissioners to speak to this in hopes that perhaps some of the folks who have been involved in this process might hear their concerns heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gustafson. Other commissioners wish to speak? Commissioner Curd?
Yeah, thank you. This is Karsten. I would also thank you for bringing this up, Commissioner Gustafson. I'd also say that, this has been a long public process, and I appreciate everyone's sticking with it for so long. It's since the initial public hearings and the noticing to so many people, that was a pretty expensive process. And so I recognize that that was real. That was a real big lift for the applicants and also for the community to stay involved and stay up to date on all the issues and keep coming back to learn more. I want to say, specifically associated with something that Commissioner Westerbeck brought up this evening, is that these code amendments, we can't spot zone places. We can't pull a single lot out of the city and say, this is what we want to do here. This is what we want to do here. We want the city. It's not a Lego city. We can't build it the exact way we want, right? We have to say, these are the values that we have. These are the compatible uses. These are the incompatible uses. And then we go from there. And so I really appreciate that people have given us their feedback on their values rather than just specifically saying, this is what I don't like about it. This is what I don't like about this specific unit. Instead saying, I care about, proximity to amenities for my family with IDD, or I care about, looking out of my backyard. I care about these are the value statements that really matter to us as commissioners. And so I want to appreciate people who took the time to phrase it in more of the values rather than sort of targeting. So that was really, I appreciated that. And that kind of came through in the final findings, right? And so the fact that we are using the values that we've heard over the past year to craft these code and comprehensive plan amendments that start to shape this zone to allow things that might not have been allowed with a more strict and stringent code, but are still compatible and are still they still fit with the downtown plan that was originally created too. So our plan is a living document, and I just appreciate that people are here to change it with us. So thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Curd. Other comments? Yes, Commissioner Jones.
I really appreciate what my fellow commissioners just said, and I would add that this was a challenging set of amendments for me to consider because on one hand, I live within the public notice area, and I should make that clear, and to separate sort of personal interests and neighborhood interests from the larger goals and values of what I believe we're doing here today. And I really appreciate the planning department's ability to capture some or put some sort of value statement on affordable housing and what that means in the city of Bothell, and to do that in association with incentives. And even if it may be limited to just a few properties in the downtown area, I think the values speak to what we're trying to achieve here. And I really appreciate that. So thank you, not only to the public, but also to the planning department.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. Others? So a comment was made about walking the properties, and I have walked this property more than once. I know many, I won't speak for everyone, but I know many of the commissioners have walked the property and to get a feel for the neighborhood. We take our, and I will speak for all the commissioners on this, we take our responsibility seriously. And we do try to look on the ground what the impacts will be beyond the paper that we push. So it has been a long process. We thank those of you who stayed with it. I know everyone's not always happy with the final result, but I believe this will help make Bothell a better community. So with that, if there are no other, Commissioner Westerbeck.
I'll add a few more comments. I agree. I love that people are passionate about this. I used to be the one who would come and make comments at Planning Commission, and so eventually applied, and now here I am. So we care. We nerd out on this stuff. We care about it a lot. We're here because we're trying to create community for everyone. And I have mentioned before, I have an IDD daughter as well. But beside that, I want Bothell to be the kind of place where they're welcome. 37,000 units are needed in Washington State. I feel like this came to us and I thought, well, this is fantastic. Someone wants to do this in Bothell. Look at this enormous need. And we have the Drews who, again, I do development math all the time. This is a challenging one to make pencil out. To generously offer 50% is a gift to Bothell. It's a gift. It's huge. This is going to be a real a bright spot in our community. And I live also within the Mailer area downtown, so I got information on this as well. I also have walked I know every square foot of this downtown because I live downtown. So I've looked at this property. I've walked it all the way up like through the blackberries and stuff like that in the past before this project even came along because it's near me. I've also walked Hall Road a number of times long before this ever came along because I walk all over to the downtown area. So I'm just glad that we're a community opening our arms to this kind of thing and finding a way for it to happen. I appreciate that. I appreciate that people care a lot about what happens around them. I tend to think that it won't be probably as impactful for a lot of people as they think. Since 5,000-6,000 years now, as long as humans have created cities and places, they change, they grow, they adapt, they make room for new people and different kinds of communities, we hope, and it's inevitable. So this is just a Bothell, again, changing and adapting to the times. It's not going to be 1985 Bothell forever, and we need to make room for our kids and people with other needs besides those like ours. And I think it's wonderful that this says. I also want to remind everyone, like one of the reasons we're seeing increased homeless challenges throughout the United States. We don't allow a lot of like transitional housing like we did 50 and 100 years ago. Single, what they call them, like single room hotels, SROs and stuff like that. They were considered undesirable. As a culture, we got rid of them. And now we have a lot more people in tents on sidewalks because we don't provide for them. So a lot of people want a micro unit. So as far as that goes, they do fill a need. People would much rather have that than be without a home entirely. So I think it's presumptuous of us to pretend that everybody needs what we think we need to be happy and to live. Our requirements are very different than someone else's. When I was a young person, lived in a unit that was less than 150 square feet on Capitol Hill for 2 years, and it was inexpensive, and I loved it. It was great, fantastic. I had to go down the hall to go to the bathroom, and I didn't feel it was a hardship at all. So we need to bring that back. We need to make it legal again. So anyway, just a few comments. I'm glad that we're becoming the kind of community that is opening its mind to these ideas and making room for people who also want to be part of Bothell. Thank you.
Any other comments? So we do have before us a motion, and it's been seconded, correct? I've lost track. Yes, to adopt the findings, conclusions, and recommendations as amended this evening. All in favor?
Aye.
Turn off my mic. We had a unanimous vote supporting these. I'd like to thank Senior Planner Boyd, not just for bearing with us this evening while we forced him to draft on the fly, but also for all the work that went into this. It's been a long process. I think it has been responsive, not to everything that's been raised, but to many of the concerns. There have been changes made based on what we heard. And thank you for doing that and helping us through this process. We appreciate your time on it. And with that, I'll close the hearing. And there will be, as was indicated, this will be before the council in September for a study session and for a hearing.
Tentatively, we're shooting for September study session, early October hearing.
Okay, so you will have another opportunity to make more comments at that time. Thank you all for your attendance, and that will conclude this agenda item, and we'll proceed. Next item is reports from staff. We're making our deputy director get up and down several times this evening. Thank you. I can tell from the title alone, this will be interesting, and thank you for presenting it.
So I received a couple of questions from planning commissioners on the middle housing ordinance for the comprehensive plan and code amendments. And so I thought what would be best to go off of is this document we provided to City Council, I believe June 13th. My dates are all getting fuzzy. Sometime in June, this was provided to them. And essentially what we did is compared what the Planning Commission's recommendation was to HB 1110 and made recommendations to City Council on how to move forward with the ordinance, because when we started this, HB 1110 was like a twinkle in folks' eyes, and then it got adopted before this got adopted by City Council. And so we had an interesting exercise in figuring out what do we do with a planning commission recommendation, and then what do we do with new state regulations, essentially mandating that we adopt some level of middle housing. And so some of the questions that were sent our way focused on one of the planning commission recommendations was that all existing lots have be allowed to have 4 units on them. So one of the things that we're waiting on right now from the Department of Commerce is guidance on what HB 1110, like the application and intent of each section. And so we're in an interesting spot of writing code without that guidance. And so one of the things we tried to do is kind of take a strict read of HB 1110 and put that into a proposed ordinance. And so that's where a lot of the changes came from between the Planning Commission recommendation and HB 1110. We tried to leave as much in as possible from Planning Commission, but anywhere where we felt that it was not in compliance with HB 1110, or we didn't think it would pass muster of alternative compliance, we went with a more strict read of HB 1110 with the intention that once we got guidance, we may still have to make amendments to the code. So one of the things that we are waiting for guidance on is HB 1110 allows for fourplexes on any lot that is permits single-family zoning if at least one unit is affordable. And we don't have guidance on whether if we say you can have a fourplex outright, does that unit have to be affordable? They're essentially treating the third unit as the bonus for providing an affordable unit. And so we went with the duplexes everywhere, and then the fourplexes with the affordable unit. There's also fourplexes within a quarter mile of transit that we included. The other thing that was brought to our attention was when you read HB 1110, it does not distinguish between new lots and existing lots, which leads us to believe it means all lots. So whether the lot was created in 1910 or created 5 years from now, the regulations remain the same. We are waiting for guidance on whether we can regulate them differently, but as someone who's been reading code for a long time, if you don't say new or existing, you mean all. And so that got into a little bit of figuring out what to do with the affordability requirement. And so one of the things that we suggested to council is if they do want to move forward with an affordability requirement, that may need to come later so that we have more time to do analysis based on the requirements of HB 1110 versus the requirements of, or the suggestion or recommendation of Planning Commission. So this document, I'm hoping, provides a little bit of background on why some of those changes were suggested at the July 11th hearing. Before I jump to what the next steps are, I said a lot, so if there's any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Commissioners, questions? It's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
Commissioner Gustafson?
Hi, Sarah Gustafson here, and I'd like to thank Deputy Director Winchell and the planning staff for guiding us through the labyrinth of changing regulations and holding that light up for us. And then there's another labyrinth to guide us through, and that's what's going on right now. When it all boils down, I'm just shaking my head, not at the staff, but at the current situation in which there is an affordability requirement for fourplexes, but not for new subdivisions. Please correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's just so much more logical to require the affordability for a larger development than a smaller one. So I want to put that out there, make sure I understand it before the next steps.
Yeah, so that's something too, we're hoping additional guidance gives us some parameters of like how we could apply affordability differently than HB 1110, but we just don't have that guidance right now. And so, we do want to look into this further, but want to make sure that whatever we put in our code meets alternative compliance per the Department of Commerce, because we'd hate to put something in the code that then doesn't pass, and then we have to do more research. So there's a little bit of weight on that. And it's just, we're further than other cities that we have something, but then we also are in this spot of we have something, but we also have new requirements. And so now we have to mix the two together. And so it's definitely on our radar and something that we'll be looking into, especially as we start looking at updating our housing strategy and needing to comply with HB 1220, which passed last year. So all of the HBs and SBs kind of coalescing right now.
Great.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Westerbeck.
Commissioner Westerbeck here. This is more of a just commentary, but I never, and I of course voiced this in meetings in the past. I always thought our dead city bonus for new plats for missing middle, for our middle housing was always too complicated and unnecessary. I think it's, I'm hoping the state prevails here and that all existing and new lots, new plats, et cetera, it's just 4 units allowed, period. Just keep it simple, straightforward. You got a lot, residential lot, it's 4 units, call it a day. And that, of course, would be Bothell. I know the state's duplex, unless it's quarter mile and affordable, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, I just want to make that comment. I was thrilled to see that. I call it the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup because we get the best of both. Because I think our donut, I mean, I helped shape this. Actually, I like I said, I never liked it because I think it's too complicated. I mean, I understand we do percentages and stuff, but you end up with this neighborhood that's a mix of 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're doing it for people who don't want the city to grow. And you know, we've got $1 million houses in Bothell, so I just feel like let's get to it. Let's do things that actually matter, and this would make more of an impact. And honestly, 4 unit doesn't pencil out very well in Bothell anymore, given the cost of land, and so it's not going to make much of a difference anyway. So might as well just make it easy.
Thanks for that feedback. And then I also will note that the market analysis, summary of engagement, and racial equity analysis is all on the Middle Housing webpage. I think that all of this had passed out of Planning Commission by the time, so I wanted to make sure you all had a chance to see that, and that does address a little bit of, some studies that were done by our consultant to figure out what percentage of lots could potentially be both feasible and meet the requirements. And I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but it is a pretty small number. And so
It is.
I think,
And I read it all. If you haven't read it already, maybe you already has. The DEI report, feasibility study, all that. It's absolutely fantastic. We got really good work from them, and I appreciate it enormously. I wish everyone in Bothell would read those reports. I think it's really important information. I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but they're really good.
so then the second question that was brought to us by Commissioner Westerbeck was, no action was taken last night. And so the reason why, or one of the considerations is why no action was taken, is that we need to make comprehensive plan amendments to make code amendments. And the Growth Management Act allows us to update our comprehensive plan once a year. So all of our private comprehensive plan amendments and city-initiated comprehensive plan amendments all have to be considered in unison. It doesn't mean that council has to approve all of them. They can say we're going to approve this one and not this one, but the intent of that is that we look at our comprehensive plan and the changes cumulatively. So we essentially know the right hand knows what the left hand is doing, and we've thought about all of those changes together. And so you all heard the other comprehensive plan amendment tonight, which does then move that recommendation forward to City Council. And so there can be consideration of both comprehensive plan amendments at this point, because they've received a recommendation. It's made its way through the process. And so also it doesn't mean that the public hearings would be combined, because again, these are very different proposals, and that would be the way it's kind of formulated by the state can be kind of confusing. And so essentially those public hearings and work sessions would happen with City Council, and then there would be one final decision on all of the comprehensive plan updates. So that was the reason why, one of the reasons why there wasn't action taken last night, was so that we could move forward with our comprehensive plan amendments.
Thank you for that. Other questions or comments around this document? And again, thanks for providing it to us. All right. Any other updates from staff?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, it's, Sarah Gustafson again. Thank you. I did want to make sure that we took a look at the timeline together. My first thought is, if City of Bothell can only update the comprehensive plan once a year, what happens if the Department of Commerce guidelines are not available by the time the comprehensive plan amendments go to council? Does that mean that the fourplex flexibility might not happen until next year?
So Code amendments can be taken at any time. So we're continuing conversations with council in the fall, and we haven't received direction from them on how they want to consider both. So they could decide to move forward without guidance. They could decide to move forward with the comp plan amendments and hold code amendments. We don't have that exact direction at this point in time, but essentially the comprehensive plan amendments that are required to adopt middle housing, as far as we can tell from our legal read of it and our what we've done so far, is that those we don't need any Department of Commerce guidance to adopt the comprehensive plan amendments, but the code amendments may benefit from that, but we're continuing that conversation with council of how they'd like to move forward.
Hi, Sarah Gustafson here. I'm confused, but I'm also aware that I've asked a lot of questions, and I'm hoping some of okay. So, basic question: the code amendments, can they be, if we put forward, or if the city puts forward a principle in the comprehensive plan amendments, does that then open the door for whenever in the next year a fourplex amendment might come up, that the city can just pass it whenever it comes to the table?
Yeah, so if we propose, whenever we propose amendments to our zoning code, it's supposed to be in compliance with our comprehensive plan. And so if our comprehensive plan were amended, but the zoning code was not amended, it would at least make sure that that step has been taken. So essentially, we should be making sure that all of our code amendments comply with the comprehensive plan. And if the comprehensive plan has been updated to support future code amendments, then that would not be an obstacle to that code adoption.
Thank you so much again for answering this. Sarah Gustafson here. What should we recommend as part of the comprehensive plan amendments, perhaps as a planning commission, to lay the groundwork for the future fourplex flexibility or other amendments that we might like to see?
I believe that action was taken in early June.
Okay.
So those amendments laid the groundwork for middle housing in general.
Okay. Anyone else? My suggestion would be that perhaps we as a planning commission point out that this is missing right now due to circumstances beyond the control of staff and planning commission. I mean, we could do it without the guidance, but I don't think that would go through. And that we really want to keep people focused on the fact that sometime in the future, within the next year, we would like to revisit the fourplex flexibility. That's just what comes first to my mind, but any other items that we think should be passed with urgency.
And we do have the opportunity to review and make recommendations on the docket in January, correct?
Yes, we've kind of started moving forward more with like a work plan, and then we are potentially looking at limiting some of the docket items because of the comprehensive plan next year. So there may be a lighter docket because the comprehensive plan will be so consuming.
Okay. But again, the commission will have the opportunity to review the work plan and make a recommendation. Whether or not there is capacity to act on that is a separate question. But we will have the opportunity to speak to what we believe is important and should be included, and then the process will go where it may. Correct?
Yeah. Yes, the work plan will be presented to Planning Commission.
Okay. So think about what you want to have for January. All right. Other comments on this?
No comments from staff on this.
All right. Any other reports from staff?
I wanted to let you all know that the Engage Bothell website is up, so engagebothell.com. We have an activity right now. I believe Commissioner Jones inspired it. It's what makes Bothell special. So when we were talking about the vision, you asked what how is the vision unique to Bothell? And that got us thinking about how we could ask our community to tell us what they think makes it unique. And then at summer nights this Friday and next Friday, we will be tabling a booth to talk to folks. So if you see us, say hi, tell your friends to come say hi to us. And we'll be talking to people about the comprehensive plan and some of our visioning exercises. Other than that, no major updates from us. Just encourage you all to check out Engage Bothell and share it with all your friends and family and everyone.
Thank you. I've been seeing some good feedback from that online, so it is out there. All right. Reports from members. Members like to chime in on anything? Seeing none, and I don't believe we have anything particular to report to council either, unless anyone says otherwise. All right, so this is our meeting before the August break. We will not be meeting again until September 6th, most of us. So with that, there being no further business, is there a motion to adjourn?
This is Commissioner Kurd. I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Gustafson, I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
So we adjourn the Bothell Planning Commission meeting at 8:06. We'll hope you all have a very good summer, and we'll see you September 6th.